that we can, if we're going to put a finger on it right now, just in what we've seen in the exit polls. That is, I'm not sure that the African-American vote was as enthusiastic about Hillary. But I also think that there's one group, and I said this morning on another network, I said, you're going to be shocked because in a lot of ways, I think that married white female voters have been lying to pollsters. I actually think that in a lot of cases...
Caught the British disease, have you? The shy voter.
Well, everyone was talking about this hidden vote. I didn't think there was a huge hidden vote, but if I could put my finger on one group that I thought was like, well, they may tell pollsters whatever, they don't want to be called sexist or racist because that was why they were holding in their vote, and they walked in there and they pulled that lever.
Can I just tell you, looking forward past this night, and again, it's not over, but it's not looking good for Hillary Clinton. What scares me, and I don't mean to make a partisan comment here, but what really scares me as an American thinking about a Trump presidency is we have an exceptionally strong executive here. And the executive branch has been given and taken more and more power over the years. And in Donald Trump, you have someone who respects no norms. We kind of assume that in that role, you'll have someone who respects a certain boundary, who doesn't take everything they can, who doesn't step over the line. There are certain norms that keep the executive in check that aren't explicitly written into law. And so what's really frightens me about a Donald Trump presidency is the fact that this is a man who's clearly demonstrated he has no use for the norms of our country and no real respect for our democratic institutions. So that's what is scary to me and should be for a lot of Americans.
Well, we've had some very interesting candidates from your country in the last few years, and here's one of them, Sarah Palin, who was down at the Trump rally a couple of minutes ago. Let's see what she's had to say.
Well, see, Great Britain, America, see how we're hooking up now with going rogue and saying, you know, the people are going to take back control of our governance, really. We're going to be able to say, no, we don't want this globalism. And we can't be telling other countries, other nations, how to sweep their porches if we can't sweep our own yet. So we got to take care of what's going on here within our borders, just like you all have done, especially recently, and good relationship.
Are you seeing something of Brexit in tonight?
Yes, that's exactly the movement. And when the vote came down there, I was looking at it like, watch, it's gonna come on over to the pond, and we're gonna have some of that just bleed on over into America, and certainly we see that tonight.
So you're seeing better relations in the future between you?
Absolutely, better relations, and that's the way that it should be, really. That's you know, we have such mutual concerns for peace and security throughout the world. So I think Trump's really going to look forward to just really strengthening the allied relationship that we already have. It's going to get better. Thank you.
Sarah Palin a couple of minutes ago. So Ford, pretty obvious choice for Secretary of State there.
I don't know what she's going to be in.
I thought Newt Gingrich was going to be Secretary of State.
I have no idea what position she's going to be in. I will say, though, that I did work with Sarah Palin in the 2008 presidential campaign. And just as we're looking at the states remaining to be called, I will tell you that back in 2008, I think she was a little bit early on the Trump message. You know, for all the grief that they gave John McCain, when I saw the rallies in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio, and as well as President Obama did, it blew my mind away that she was one of the first people to tap on what we're seeing tonight across the country.
Crystal,
particularly in the Midwest.
Whatever happens at the end of today, there is little doubt that Donald Trump has raised some serious questions and issues that have appealed to quite a chunk of the American people that need addressing.
Yeah. No, and I think you saw that a similar energy, though with less force and unable to ultimately be successful on the Democratic side of the aisle through Bernie Sanders. So, I mean, when Trump first came on the scene, I was not one who immediately said, oh, this guy's just a joke. I thought pretty early on that he would win the Republican primary. And I thought that if he stuck to this message of China, 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 trade, immigration, that if he could be focused on that, I thought it was pretty compelling because you have, you know, it's funny because if you look at the economic indicators, things are getting better. Wages are rising, unemployment is shrinking, but there's a fear not just about our own futures, but about our children's futures and what kind of jobs they're going to be able to get and what kind of education and what kind of life. And the mainstream of our politics hasn't addressed it. around the margins, we'll have a program set up to teach you to code, but the industries that people relate to, the things that have been successful for them in the past, no one has really spoken to that, and Trump did, and Bernie Sanders did to a certain extent too.
Well, Ford is one thing talking about them and persuading people that those are the things they should care about. The next thing is delivering it if you get into office. That's tougher, isn't it?
Well, it is going to be a lot tougher to deliver it once you get into office. But you have to understand something. He was tapping on things that a lot of elites and a lot of people in urban centers really were dismissing. He was talking about factory wages, and the Democrats' response was, well, we'll retrain people. You try telling a 50-year-old man, I'm going to retrain you for a new job. Good luck with that. And it's really that Midwest that resembles a lot like what happened in Brexit. You're telling people that we're just never going to bring the factories back and we're going to be able to have new jobs to retrain. They don't see that. And I think in a lot of ways, these were people so thirsty to find someone who would lead them that they would believe in anything, including a mirage.
But lead them backwards.
Well, we don't.
He is a mirage.
Well, we don't know that he's leading them backwards. We don't know what's going to happen.
They want something that's passed, don't they?
Donald Trump, I live in Kentucky now, in the eastern part of the state. That's coal country. It's Appalachia. It's very similar culturally to West Virginia. And he'll go to East Kentucky and he'll tell people there, I'm going to bring the coal jobs back. Well, that's not true. Those jobs are gone. They're not coming back. And it's not because of Obama and the EPA. It's because of the way that the energy industry has changed and coal is no longer competitive. We still make things in this country. It just takes a lot fewer humans to make the things that we used to make. But he has no problem going out and saying, we're going to bring the factories back. What he leaves out is the fact that we actually make more in this country. It's just that robots are taking those jobs. So, I think that's right, that people were so willing to believe in anything that they would believe in a mirage. And the reality is, he is a mirage. He's the ultimate con artist, and we've fallen for it.
But he's certainly raised a lot of hopes.
He has raised a lot of hopes, and I think the biggest problem for him is going to be getting a team around him who can help him deliver on many of these promises. Look, I agree with you.
He listens to teams so well.
Well, he is now going to be the 45th president of the United States. So guess what? We have to wake up tomorrow morning and find a way to move our country forward. And I think that there's some things that he may be on to. Look, we don't need to be starting trade wars with the rest of the world, but I do think when it becomes to multinational and bilateral trade agreements that we need to be thinking not only about the long term of the American worker, but also the short term. And I think that these are ideas, whether or not they actually bring about and meet all of the hopes that he was selling. I think that a lot of people are willing to take a chance on it because the way things are currently going, they felt they were never going to have a chance as long as Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's policies are going forward.
Back to you in a minute. If I could, let's head over to the Trump rally in New York, where they're looking increasingly positive and excited there. And Hannah is there, I believe, for us.
Yes, so as Trump inches his way to those to 270, people are holding aloft one of the signs that's been very popular at his rallies across the country. It says the silent majority stands with Trump, and it certainly looks like it, doesn't it, that the silent majority appears to be very much making its voice heard. Trump's campaign strategy from the beginning was to return again and again to those pockets of the country where people, middle class and working class people, feel forgotten. They haven't benefited from the global recovery since the 2008 financial crisis. The big manufacturing employers have disappeared from their towns because those jobs have gone to Mexico and China. The shiny new opportunities in tech and science are not for them, not available to them. They are concerned about national security, about immigration, about the changing face of America, in which white people will become a minority by the mid-2040s, according to US Census data. Donald Trump spotted that opportunity and exploited it masterfully, and the people he was talking to really believed him. Now, the Trump campaign strategy was always, what they always said, what they always spun to the press, was that there's no way of understanding how many of these people are going to turn out from your rigged polls and the way the media elite looks at these things. These are people who have never been involved in the political process before. And as we see him take states like Wisconsin, it appears that in part that strategy is beginning to bear fruit. Still some way to go, but an absolute...
Say oh hello to Broadway's newest stars.
Oh, hello.
The New York Times says there's still...
Hannah, thanks very much indeed. Let's head down the road. I imagine rather a different mood down at the Clinton rally. No sign of Hillary Clinton yet, but Greg is there. I imagine things haven't picked up a lot.
No, I think they're clinging on to some what appear to be pretty slim hopes that some of those states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that they can eke out victories there. She would have to come from behind in at least two of those to win. But their hope is that there is still a way to get there. But the contrast in mood here now compared to what they were expecting throughout today, and in fact throughout the last few days, when Hillary Clinton was pulling ahead in the polls by 3-4 points, the average of the national polls. The swing states were looking good for her, and the mood here, and they were preparing for this victory rally here in a place which has a glass ceiling. It's effectively a greenhouse. It has a literal glass ceiling, so she could talk about shattering that metaphorical glass ceiling of becoming the first woman to ascend to the highest office in the land. There was a real sense this was a victory rally, not a place they would be giving a concession speech. And throughout really only the last 3 hours, from when we were hearing from the Clinton campaign about what Hillary Clinton was doing, what Bill Clinton was doing, they are at a hotel, we understand, not far from here, writing speeches, descriptions of what her granddaughter Charlotte was wearing. It was all very upbeat, and you got the sense they were just waiting for the moment to arrive. The mood now, and they've seen the results come, they've seen everything they expected turned on its head, really, and with a few outside hopes now of clinging on and getting to victory. It is a very, very subdued mood here, and I think, like people all over America and people I've heard from all over America tonight, some big questions about what this means for the country, for the world, and certainly for Democrats as well, where they go from here, because it would appear to end Hillary Clinton's political career. She's nearly 70 and has had what will have been 2 failed runs for the White House, and I think extraordinary for people here to contemplate that when they expected such a different outcome.
I'm seeing tears down there in the crowd, Greg. Thanks very much indeed. Let's just bring in our panelists again, Ford O'Connell and Crystal Ball. And they're certainly pretty gloomy faces, Crystal, down at the Hillary rally. It seems to tell the story. A lot of them obviously don't think there is a way back. I mean, there is statistically a way back.
Yes,
but
that's true. Well, and I mean, partly, I think, and I just came from there, by the way, and the mood was a little bit like death. I think it's partly too because there was this expectation that it was going to be just a night of celebration. I mean, we expected Florida to go for her, North Carolina, we expected it all.
Weeks ago, it looked a breeze, didn't it?
Absolutely, and it's, you know, it's a little more personal, this election, because it's hard to come to grips with, the idea of, once again, we still will be a country that's never elected a woman president, and that means an awful lot to myself and my daughter and a lot of people out there and a lot of people at that party. But it's also personal because in Donald Trump, you do have a candidate who has personally insulted so many people in the country. So it's hard as a woman, as a minority, as a Muslim, to look out now at this nation and say, how can you support this man? What does that say about how you feel about me in this country? So, you know, I certainly backed President Obama. Last time I backed him against John McCain, but I did not feel quite this way about Mitt Romney or John McCain, not even close. You know, I didn't also have this fear about, well, what does this even look like? I mean, we, in reality, know so little about Donald Trump. He didn't release his tax returns. We know very little about his financial dealings. I mean, what entanglements does he have overseas that might influence his judgment? We just don't know.
Just before I come back to you, I just want to bring in the swing states and remind ourselves where things stand at the moment. And there we are. We've got Donald Trump holding on to Georgia for the Republicans, although it looked pretty close. It was the first state out of the bag tonight, but it took a long time to settle it. And just having a look at some of these others here, and Iowa has flipped to the Democrats, as has Florida, and North Carolina, of course, remaining with the Republicans. Obama took it 8 years ago, Romney took it back 4 years ago, and Trump has held on to that. Hillary Clinton hanging on to Colorado. But not a pretty gloomy picture, really, for Hillary Clinton there. There's Virginia and Ohio, so Virginia, Hillary Clinton hanging on to. Ohio has gone the other way. It's Trump's taking it away from the Democrats. It's always been the flip-flop state. Let's pop outside to Kay Burley, who's at Fox News headquarters in downtown New York. Kay?
Hey, Jeremy. Yeah, we were in Times Square. As you know, last time you spoke to us, there was an air of disbelief there. We've now moved outside the Fox News building, as you said, just a couple of blocks away, and much more delighted at what we're seeing unfolding on our TV screens. I just want to chat to this chap. Hello to you. You're live on Sky News just at the moment. You voted for Mr. Trump.
I did, yes.
Why?
Conservative values, take back America, big spending. Hillary is just the same old thing, so we need some change in America.
What about some of the more outlandish things that he might have said?
Well, I mean, I think they're both outlandish. They both make outlandish comments, and that's what politicians do. And I think Donald's making these statements, but he's going to come in, be conservative. He's going to rally the troops and change what we need to do in America.
What about sexual assaults against women and building the wall and his view on Muslims?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's all media, hype, a mixture of things. So, you know, there's a lot of garbage on Hillary. There's a lot of garbage around. Unfortunately, they're not both the best candidates, but Trump still has the conservative values that I believe in, and that obviously a lot of Americans believe in.
Okay, and you're from?
I'm from Michigan.
My goodness me, it's all down to your state.
Last
isn't
state,
it?
yes, which rarely goes Republican.
Okay, what do you think is going to happen?
I think it's going to happen.
Okay, so you think it's President Trump by tomorrow morning?
I'm hoping, yeah.
Okay, let's see. Thank you. Just want to go this way, meander through this crowd. It's really, really building up now. Excuse me, madam. I'm so sorry. Can I just squeeze through? I do beg your pardon. Thank you. There's a guy down here at the front. Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. Can I just squeeze you by? Thank you. Hello to you. Hi. You're live on Sky News just at the moment. We can see who you are going to support.
Oh,
Why?
Yes. Well, he's not part of the establishment. He's not corrupt. He's an American patriot running for the American people. As you can see, you had to probably bump a lot of people just to get through here, just to get this interview. So he is for the American people. He is not for other countries. He takes donations from everyone here rather than the people that are living in the penthouses right now.
Okay, so how do you think the pollsters got it so wrong again?
How did the what?
The pollsters, because the polls were suggesting that it was Hillary's.
Oh, yeah, well, because they're corrupt. I mean, Hillary gets questions for the debates from CNN, gets debates from Fox, gets even Fox gets debate questions from CNBC, and yet they all give polls for Hillary. And honestly, I was nervous last night looking at the polls. A little nervous, but then the American people came out and they showed their support for Donald Trump tonight. And even with the biased polls from last night and even today, we know the real polls, as you can see watching the TV. The real polls are showing tonight.
What about some of the outlandish things he said about the wall and about women and sexual harassment?
Well, that's the thing. I give immigrants a little bit some ammunition, because he has said some mean things, especially about women. But when that video came out, like the video you're talking about, when he's talking about kind of sexually approaching a married woman, I took that as like, wow, like that's a not so good husband. Maybe, you know, he could be a better role model for he could be a better role model for his sons and daughters. But then I turn on the TV and somehow the media calls him a racist for it. They call him all these names for it, rather than attack him for going against his wife, maybe against his daughters and what he brings his children upon. And then I'm thinking, this isn't even about him personally. This is just about kind of attacking Republicans generally, you know. And I think Republicans and people in general are just tired of being called a racist, being called names, but then at the same time, people become hypocrites. So
good to talk to you. Thanks very much
yes.
indeed. Madam, can we just have a very quick word with you? You're supporting Mr. Trump?
Yes, I am.
Why?
Because we need to make America great. He's the only one that can wipe out the corruption. You have to have an outsider come in and do it. There's nobody else can do it but him.
Okay, and his views on women?
I think that they are misconstrued in the news. I think that
in what way? When he talked about grabbing women's pussies?
Well, I think that was locker room banter. I can say that myself because women talk like that too sometimes. I think people are just too sensitive, and that is not should even be considered for president. I mean, you do want to know about their demeanor and how they're going to be, but he wasn't even a presidential candidate. He wasn't even in politics then. He was just joking around with somebody on a bus. Yeah, I mean, you know, you have to watch what you say. If you can, you know,
the reason I asked you, madam, is because I chatted to a couple of young girls in Times Square, and they were saying that they felt that gave ordinary men carte blanche to sexually assault women if the president
No. I don't take it that way at all. I don't take it that something you're saying in private. It wasn't meant for public. I can tell you that as women, I've joked about stuff like that before with other women. I mean, it's not beautiful. It's not pretty. It's not something you want to hear. But it was something that was said in private.
One thing that will make a difference, he will make a difference in if he becomes president of the United States.
He'll bring jobs back to America, and we'll have growth, and people will get out of poverty. Chicago, if you get people in Chicago jobs, the violence will stop. They'll have something to do.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. This way, Dave, if you don't mind. Let's chat to this guy over here. Hi, you're live on Sky News at the moment.
Please don't interview me.
Why not?
I don't want to be seen. Can you interview Mark? Interview Mark. Interview Mark.
Okay. Are you shy Trumpers, you guys? We're from London.
London? Want to do it together?
Why do you not want to talk to us?
What happened?
You're supporting Trump?
Of course.
Why?
Why not?
I don't know. What?
We got to make America great again.
Okay. What religion are you? May I ask you?
I'm Jewish.
Okay. So what do you think about
religion?
Yeah. What do you think about the comments that he's made about Muslims?
What do I think about the comments? What he made about Muslims? I don't think he said anything.
Why not?
What comments did he make? I'm asking you.
Okay. Thanks very much indeed. So as you can see, splitting the views. There you go. I think we probably know which way he's going to vote. There was a gentleman here that I wanted to talk to. Hello, sir. You're live on Sky News at the moment. You're voting for Mr. Trump?
I did vote for Mr. Trump, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why?
Really, I mean, looking at both candidates, I think in my lifetime, they're probably the two worst candidates we've had to vote for. But when you get into political power and corrupt government, I think that Hillary Clinton ended up being the worst candidate. So I don't know if we were voting for the best person. We were voting for the least worst person. It's kind of how I felt.
That's a little alarming, isn't it, for the rest of the world?
I would, yes, but in in America, people are going to be successful, whoever the president is. It's the greatest country on earth, and even people that complain about Obama, there's still people that are doing great things in this country. And my hope is that the people can unite together and work together, because the people are the people that are the power, and one person's really not going to make that much of a difference, I don't think.
And what about some of the more outlandish things that he said?
Well, that's where you go into, if you look at what he said as opposed to what Hillary Clinton does, and I'm not a political historian, but the things that have been reported that she does is, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will only hurt me. And a lot of the things that he says, I totally disagree with. But there's a lot of things that she does I totally disagree with also.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. So obviously you're speaking to the experts in the studio there, Jeremy, but here on the ground, we're just outside, as I said, the Fox News headquarters, and the crowd here.
For the last 5 days, 17 hours, and 23 minutes, you've been a passenger.
I'm back in baby's arms. How I miss those.
Mazda's Skyactiv technology makes it good to be a driver.
They celebrate or just marvel at the way politics works, and it's worth just bearing in mind that one of the big states, electoral college-wise, that still hasn't called, that is pretty key, is Pennsylvania. Let's just remind you how it stands at the moment. It's a state that is different from many others because it doesn't have any advance or early voting. It just votes on the day. But 93% of the votes are already in. Donald Trump, a nose in front, 48.65 to 47.85, with other candidates pulling in 3.5% of the votes. So Mr. Trump just in front, but 7% of the votes still to come. So it could be pretty vital. So let's check in with Mark Stone, our man in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And it really is looking like her last brick in the firewall.
This was one of her firewalls. It still is, but I think that firewall is getting smaller and smaller now. It's looking, as it always does in these things, at counties rather than states. And it appears to be the one particular county, Allegheny County in western Pennsylvania. It's where the city of Pittsburgh is located. That is where she was yesterday. We were there yesterday afternoon. It is those big cities on the flanks of this state, the east and the west, Philadelphia in the east, Pittsburgh in the west. These are the states which should be Democrat strongholds, states which she shouldn't really have been that worried about. But it is looking as though that is a county where she will be particularly worried. More worried, too, about the rural heartland of Philadelphia. This is the Rust Belt, towns like the one we're in now, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. This was a place where, in years gone by, was a bustling steel center. They've transported steel from here right around the world. Other towns, very, very similar. They always say that the route to the White House leads through Pennsylvania, and when it does, it leads through towns just like this one. 95+% white people here. They are working class to a large extent. They're steel workers. They're people for whom that Trump's promise of change has resonated, and that appears to be coming true now in states like this. There are, I think, two key states that we need to be looking at tonight: Pennsylvania and to the northwest of here, Michigan as well. Michigan, of course, was not necessarily one of those states that her supporters thought if she didn't necessarily win that, it might not matter. Well, you know, listening to Tim Kaine this morning, he was on the breakfast shows. He talked about checkmate states like North Carolina, like Florida, like Pennsylvania. If she won, so he said, if she won just one of those states, she'd be into the White House. But what he wasn't taking into account is the fact that she could lose states like Michigan, which she expected that she might win, and it's not looking particularly good there now. Of course, not all the votes are counted in Michigan. It hasn't declared yet. But this is looking like an incredibly interesting night, and I'm standing, I should have told you at the beginning, I'm standing in the what was supposed to be Hillary Clinton's local support party here tonight. They've had an awful lot of workers, volunteers out, far more volunteers, it has to be said, than Donald Trump has across Pennsylvania. Just over the weekend, they knocked on more than 1 million doors. Today alone, they knocked on more than 1 million doors to try and get voters in this state out. This is where they were supposed to be celebrating in this particular county. Look at it. They've mostly gone home now. This is not looking good for Hillary Clinton, not here in Pennsylvania.
Certainly looks like they've given some of their tickets back there, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Let's check in with Ed Conway at the Results Centre. Can you add to that what's going on in Pennsylvania and those other key swing states in the region?
Well, let me show you, Jeremy, why Pennsylvania matters so much. Just remember, what we're talking about here is the race to the White House, and that's the same as saying the race to 270 electoral college votes. That's the way the American electoral system works. It's about trying to get the votes from the right places as much as trying to get a share of the popular vote. And let's assume that Donald Trump will take Alaska. That's a pretty safe Republican seat. Let's assume, too, that he'll take Wisconsin. We've had one of the networks already, Fox, calling it for Donald Trump. That would bring him to 253 electoral college votes. Why is Pennsylvania so important? Well, here we are. Here's Pennsylvania over here. Come and have a look. There's Pennsylvania, still white, kind of white at the moment. We haven't yet filled it in because the counts are still going. Have a look at how many electoral college votes it's got. 20. So if we colour that in red, and then you can see Donald Trump would have 273 electoral college votes. He would be in the White House, and that's before we even consider the rest of the states which we haven't yet had declared.
Thanks very much indeed, Ed. I'm joined again by our panel. We have Crystal and Ford and Todd. Let's bring you in for a bit of analysis. You think that it's almost come down to 2 or 3 counties that might settle the issue?
Yeah, I mean, the firewall was all these states in the upper Midwest and Pennsylvania. Now, Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, just kind of looking at which counties we're still looking for votes in, maybe 25% of the votes in there that should be a heavily Democratic county. Still a fair amount of smaller rural counties that are strong for Trump and even doing better for Trump than they did for Romney in 2012. So, I mean, the way to make up, to save that state for Clinton, I guess, we'd look at that county. Pennsylvania is interesting because if we look, you know, we were talking about they don't have early voting, and about 10% of people there said they just made up their mind in the last few days. Wow. Trump's winning that by 15%. So, you know, the early voting that was also supposed to help her in Florida and North Carolina that didn't necessarily pan out. It wasn't even a factor in Pennsylvania, and the fact that people could vote at the last minute, or more people voting at the last minute, seems to be advantaging Trump. The other thing we got to pay attention to is Michigan, and you know, where are the votes still out in Michigan? Flint would be a heavily Democratic area. It's less than half of the votes are in there, but still, these are really close. And so the firewall is really, you know, it's not states; it's a couple counties now.
Let me put one thing into perspective about Pennsylvania, just so that your audience understands. There are 900,000 more registered Democrats in the state of Pennsylvania than there are Republicans. And I believe there's only 1.2 million unaffiliated voters. The mere fact that he's going to be the first Republican, potentially, to win Pennsylvania since 1988 tells you again a lot about the message and where he's resonating in the country. Because if he does it, it's going to be along the Ohio River, and it goes back to what we were talking about. It's that manufacturing western side of Pennsylvania, and also on the eastern side of Pennsylvania, where Hillary Clinton has a lot more going for her, a lot more support. The enthusiasm is not there among her core supporters, at least in what we are seeing right now. That means that African-American vote is probably down outside of Philadelphia.
It's down 10%, and the exit polls are showing us statewide part of the electorate only 10% from 13 or 14% previously. So that's hurting Clinton.
Crystal, I guess in places like Pennsylvania, she had to get out that urban vote in Pittsburgh and Philly because pretty much the rest of the state, as you say, the old